as everyone is let in into the meeting. And I know because of timing, always, it is really great to do welcomes. And so we'll do that in a moment. Thank you.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Mr. Burnett.
They're just joining. Some people are, their audio hasn't connected yet.
Yeah, I saw that. I was just saying hi.
Mm-hmm. So I know that they may not hear you. Mr. Barnett is still connecting and Michelle is still connecting. Claudia, did you need me to help with anything?
Oh, yeah, if you want to go ahead and do the slides while I take the notes, that would work. Thank you for your help.
So it's hard to really navigate between looking at everyone, trying to engage with everyone, as well as facilitating a meeting, but we're going to work together on this. And so what I will say is welcome to the Settlement Agreement and Policy Subcommittee. I am Zainab Folk. I've been a member with PCCEP since November of 2020. I also have been working with the subcommittee since 2021, and along with Ann Campbell, who is not here at the moment, but will be joining us later on. She also has been with PCCEP since April of 2020 and served as the co-chair, then chair, and she has now stepped back based on work that she's doing, but she is still actively involved, not only with PCCEP, but also with the actual subcommittee. I'm skipping some things. PCCEP, I just want to make sure that I brought this information up. The goal of the settlement agreement, so I'll read it, and policy subcommittee is to ensure that the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, PCCEP, remains engaged with the objectives of the Department of Justice, DOJ settlement agreement, and handle any related business. The objectives include, but are not limited to, reviewing the annual Portland Police Bureau report, facilitate engagement with the government partners, ensure PCCEP meets regularly with necessary partners in the public community, and to monitor PPB or Portland Police Bureau's ultimately meet, well, excuse me, that doesn't make sense. Portland Police Bureau's meeting and that are not all necessary requirements of the settlement agreement. And I think that's meant, and to monitor PPB ultimately meets all necessary requirements of the settlement agreement. Excuse me for that. Again, I am the chair for this meeting, and Ann Campbell will be joining us shortly. If members of PCCEP are here and you want to consider joining the settlement agreement and policy subcommittee, please do so, as well as community members at large. And if you like to submit information, currently PCCEP is going through transition. So I didn't know if Judith, you want to be the person that people communicate with, because I know in the past it's been Theo.
Sure,
But
sure.
if that's the case, please also email Judith Mowry. So we're going to start with the agenda for today. This is a new year and we're reconvening. Last month's meeting was canceled, and now we're holding our meeting for the first meeting in the year 2022. And so we're going to do welcome and introductions for 10 minutes. The Department of Justice, I believe both Jared Hager and Heidi Brown are here to provide updates about the settlement agreement and where we are. We're also going to be discussing the Portland Police Bureau's Directive 1010, use of force, and more specifically, a section in there regarding moving vehicles, which is 8.5 of that directive. And then we'll also have community engagement when it comes to the discussion about the directive and any feedback. And then we'll close the meeting. And so before we go any further, I would like to start off with welcome. Again, we've talked about the former chair, Ann Campbell, who will be joining us shortly. We will be putting aside the PCCEP bylaws about subcommittee chairs and moving that to our our steering committee. And then we will be focusing on our subcommittee planning ahead. And then meeting notices and agenda procedural plan, which we're looking, and so bear with us with all the transition with PCCEP, we are looking to have a procedural plan of at least 10 days advance notice with agendas, meeting information, so people can plan accordingly. So thank you for being here tonight. And we hope this conversation in our subcommittee is beneficial to the community as well as our PCCEP members. Excuse me, before I head there, can we just do a quick introduction? We have some time, so if we can all just do our quick introductions. I won't have anything fancy about, you know what your name means or, what we've done at other meetings, but for time purposes. But let's just do a quick introduction. And again, my name is Zainab Folk. My pronouns are she and her. And should I call on people? You can go if you listen. I know how we try to do that too, is calling people. If we can't remember, we'll try to keep up with that too. But I'm just going to go based on the boxes that I see here. And I'm going to go with Claudia.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. My name is Claudia. I'm the project assistant for PCCEP.
Judith.
Hi, everybody. My name is Judith Mowry. I use she, her pronouns, and I am in the Office of Equity and Human Rights. I've been a part-time support for PCCEP with Theo and Claudia, but with Theo going off to his big new job, I am going to be a part-time, more involved interim project manager while we hire someone new. And Zainab, do you want me to call on people? Barbara Baczynski.
Hi, Barbara Baczynski, Portland Cop Watch, she, her. Just very interested in this topic.
Jared, you want to go next?
Yeah, hi, my name is Jared Hager, he, him pronouns. I am a attorney with the U.S. Department of Justice, and here in my role as the monitor of a settlement agreement between the United States and the city of Portland regarding police reform. Thanks for having me. I'll call on Heidi if I'm calling on people.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Heidi Brown, she, her pronouns. I am with the Portland City Attorney's Office and glad to be here. I've been working on the DOJ settlement agreement. Next in my box is Gloria Canson.
Hello, everybody. I'm Gloria Canson. My pronouns are she, her. I am the chairperson for the Youth Subcommittee. And I'm going to call on, is Tia there? Good, Tia.
Okay, I was unmuting. Hi, I'm Tia Palafox. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a member of the Behavioral Health Subcommittee. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Heidi Brown.
She's already gone, but
No.
Mr. Burnett is
I
next
can't
in
see
line.
anyone else.
That's fine. Mr. Burnett is next in line. So thanks, Tia.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mr. Barnett. I am a resident of Northeast Portland for 50 years. I'm 80 years old, and I'm very much concerned about police reform.
Theo, thank you, Mr. Barnett. Theo?
Hi, my name is Theo Latta. I'm a PCCEP staff member, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks for being here, everyone. I will call on Mary Claire.
Thanks, Theo. I'm Mary Claire Buckley, she, her, and I'm with the Portland Police Bureau and work on DOJ compliance in the Inspector General's office. And I will call on Ashley Lancaster.
I'll turn on my camera so you'll have a face to the name. Ashley Lancaster, she, her. I'm the director of the policy development team at the Portland Police Bureau. I've been with the Bureau for a little over 5 years at this point, but have only been working in my current capacity as the head of the policy team for about a little over a year at this juncture. Look forward to the conversation. I'm going to cut my camera just for the sake of internet stability and pass it on to Brandon.
Hello, I'm Brandon Farley, filmmaker resident in Northwest Portland, who's watching this today to do research for a documentary I'm making. Thank you.
Nice. Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks.
Barbara? But did we do that already? Barbara Brzezinski? Okay, sorry. Barb? Okay, Amy?
Yep, this is hard to see the camera. Okay, good evening, everyone. Amy Anderson here. I am chair of the Behavioral Health Subcommittee.
Thanks, Amy. Is Barb with you?
No.
Okay. She's listed on here, so just want to make sure. Oh, she's still connecting. Oh, Dr. Johnny Lake. Okay. I'm gonna move on and Mark Horace, I see. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, Mark is in
Just
the,
to make sure.
Mark's
And then-
microphone is busted. He said in the chat that he is.
Okay. I'm
Northeast
glad that
Portland.
someone's monitoring the chat. Thank you.
Yep, Northeast Portland community member and volunteer with Portland Cop Watch.
And so who's monitoring the chat?
I
Just want to
am.
make sure.
Yeah,
Thank
both
you. Thanks,
Theo and
Sheila.
I will
Thank
be.
Okay, so if there's anything else, I see 8 messages and I didn't see that until now. All right. Vamshi, ready?
Good evening, everyone. Vamshi Reddy with thanks. And I'm with the Portland City Attorney's Office, and I am one of the attorneys working on the DOJ settlement agreement.
Thanks, Vamshi. Appreciate that. Is it Greg Griffin?
Yes, that's correct. My name is Greg Griffin. I'm a member of Northwest Portland, and I also serve on CRC.
Thank you for being here. Sorry, it keeps jumping around, so I want to make sure. Ross Caldwell.
Hey everybody, Ross Caldwell, Independent Police Review. I've been with the city for a little over 2 years. He, him pronouns. Thank you very much. Nice to see you.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you. I see a Jonas Geisler.
This is Jonas Geisler. I'm one of the attorneys for the U.S. Department of Justice. I'm just joining for a brief period today. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Byron Christopher, you're there?
Yes, I am, Zainab. Zainab, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Yourself? Thank
Good.
you. We're just doing introductions
Okay.
quickly. Mhm.
Byron Vaughn, PCCEP member, behavioral health subcommittee, and also youth subcommittee.
Okay, I'm not sure. Thank you so much, Byron. I'm not sure if I missed anyone. It kind of jumped around, so hopefully, if you didn't introduce yourself already, please do so at this moment.
Hey, Nab, Dr. Johnny Lake put in the chat that he's sorry. He's here to listen, but he's in another meeting, so he can't talk right now.
It's great to have you here, Dr. Johnny Lake. Appreciate it.
And Barb Rainish she's here, PCCEP groupie, she says. That's her introduction for herself.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And thanks, Judith, for also monitoring. We're going to continue on. I'm going to try to bring you guys over to my right as I navigate the slides. So thank you all again for being here. We're going to start off with the DOJ and City of Portland Settlement Agreement updates. We have you listed, Jared, as first and Heidi second, but you guys can both decide who wants to go first or second. Thank you.
Heidi, do you have a preference?
You go ahead, Jared. I think last time we presented, I went first, so.
Great.
We'll pass that back and forth. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Zainab, for inviting us to present. I do have a couple of short updates. I see you have a busy or an important topic on the agenda for after us. So I don't want to take up too much time. Earlier this week, the department and the City of Portland filed a joint status report updating the court on the progress of our mediation. And the mediation has produced a proposed resolution of the department's notice of non-compliance that we issued back in April. The contents of that are 8 new paragraphs, a new section of the settlement agreement that would require the city to, comply with 8 new tasks, essentially. It has been approved by the department, but before we can file a motion to amend the settlement agreement, the contract, but we have the settlement agreement, requires that City Council consider and approve that by a vote in an ordinance. I understand the City Council is going to take it up on January 26th, and I believe they'll be accepting public comment. Heidi can correct me if I'm wrong. So if you want to be heard on the settlement agreement, you can be heard before City Council. If City Council votes to approve the amendments, then the parties will file a joint motion to amend the settlement agreement to resolve our notice of non-compliance that would add this new section. Before that motion can be approved by the court, however, the court would hold what's called a fairness hearing to ensure that the proposal is fair, adequate, and reasonable as a resolution to the Department of Justice notice of non-compliance. That fairness hearing typically involves submissions by the parties, as well as substantial public input. The amici groups, the AMAC, Albina Ministerial Alliance Coalition for Justice and Police Reform, and the MHA, the Mental Health Alliance, would present, of course, but Judge Simon has historically and will again, I have no doubt, invite any member of the public to comment on this proposal and whether it's fair, adequate, and reasonable to resolve the notice of non-compliance. And that's all sort of up in the air in terms of timing, but I can tell you what I would expect is the City Council, approves this on January 26th or February 2nd. We would likely file the motion pretty soon thereafter. And I would expect a fairness hearing to happen within 45 days. So maybe the end of February or the middle of March. And we'll obviously keep you posted. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. I will drop into the chat the proposed section 11, which includes the 9 or the 8 new paragraphs, as well as an attachment in relation to one of the paragraphs. Now they're consecutively numbered, so they start at 188 and they end at 195. But I'm happy to answer questions about it, privately after this meeting or now if folks have it. I'll try to drag it into the chat right now.
Thank you, Jared. If anyone has questions, please, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you. And thank you, Jared, because as you were talking, I was writing down questions and you answered most of them. The question that I did have, and I think you did bring it up, is about how long it takes for the process to take. And so you're saying it has to go to the city council first for vote. And can the city or someone put in that link to that meeting so that those who want to attend and provide public comment can attend to that meeting? Or could we send that out to people afterwards and make sure it's on our website? That's one. That's more for our PCCEP team. And then how long do you think the entire process could take in regards to getting the approval by the courts related to the 8 additional?
It's a good question, and it requires me to read a little bit of tea leaves. I'm not in the habit of predicting what a federal judge will do. And it would obviously depend, I think, a lot on the submissions of the parties, whether they're persuasive, whether or not there is, opposition to the proposed agreement as not being fair, adequate, and reasonable in whole, or perhaps in part. I know there have been concerns lodged by the amici groups with respect to the body worn camera paragraph 194, that it doesn't include policy principles. I don't know that I've heard much other substantial disagreement from the amici on the other paragraphs. I think they're generally either on board or not objectionable, but I don't speak for them. And of course, the public could also come forth with ideas of whether or not particular provisions are fair, adequate, and reasonable. So that's all to say, if the hearing were held in late February, the fairness hearing, and we had a day of public comment, and let's say it were going to be approved as fair, adequate, and reasonable, that might happen probably the next month. Once it's approved as a part of the settlement agreement, it will resolve the department's notice of noncompliance, and it will become a part of the settlement agreement. And so the Department of Justice at that point would evaluate the compliance with those paragraphs on a yearly basis, as we do with the other substantive provisions of the settlement agreement. I answered more than your question, but the answer
that's
is
fine. Thank
bad.
you. Thank you. And thank you for putting everything in the link as well. And if anyone from the city has a link to the city council meeting for January 26th, that would be really helpful as well to our community. Any other questions? And of course, I'm trying to monitor everything. Is there any other questions?
Yes. So Zainab, could you close we've had a request to close the PowerPoint so that all the faces could be seen. Or if you want to keep using the PowerPoint, Amy, you can push. There's a line that pops up and you can push it to be able to see more of the faces. Sorry, I've been just trying to get that one figured out.
Yes. And it's really a view that you have. That's what I'm doing right now too, is I'm trying to juggle between, for me, people like me who need to know what's happening in the meeting when you're joining on. And that's why we have the PowerPoint. For those of you who want to adjust to Zoom, there is a view that you can adjust to where you can see the whole gallery.
Except on this tablet, sorry, it doesn't, the view screen disappeared when you put the PowerPoint up. That's why I asked.
So what I can do is in between, and when people are talking, we'll close it, okay, Amy?
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. But so before we get through that, anyone else have any questions for Jared? Did you see anyone with their hands up, Judith? I'm not sure.
I do not see anyone with hands up.
Great. And so
Zainab, I just want to say that the agendas are not publicly posted until the week before. Is that correct, Heidi?
Yeah, so did I post in the chat? Did that?
You did. You posted the link.
So if you look in the chat, I explained that on Friday, January 21st, the council agenda will be posted on the link that I submitted. And at that point, that's when you can sign up. You can provide written testimony, however you want to do it. There's directions there. And also the council clerk is amazing and very helpful at answering questions. So if you have any questions, just email and they will help you. And then the following Wednesday will be the actual council hearing, and it's expected to be at 2 p.m., just so you all know.
Thank you, Heidi. And Jared, just before we close with you, anything else you want to add before we turn it over to Heidi?
I will just add that I understand on January 23rd, there will be a joint PCCEP compliance officer town hall event. It's a Sunday, I think maybe 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. To talk about something that implicates this proposed paragraph 194 on body cameras, and discussing what sorts of policy provisions might make that an effective remedy for accountability, and an effective remedy, fair, adequate, and reasonable remedy for the notice of noncompliance as 194 suggested is. So that is something I encourage you all to attend. I'll be there as well. And if you have any questions after you review what I dragged into the chat, happy to answer them at a future subcommittee meeting or privately over coffee. And Gloria, you're the next on my list, so I will be calling you after the meeting. All right, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jared. And thank you also for mentioning about COCO. Claudia or Theo or Judith, if you can drop that information into the chat so everyone knows what's happening when it comes to that actual meeting, and when they can attend that meeting that Jared just spoke about. And because, thank you, Heidi. And there, Coco's not, no one from Coco is here representing Coco to talk about that right now. Okay, well, Heidi, we're gonna turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Zainab. I appreciate it. So for anybody who might not have been on, my name's Heidi Brown. My pronouns are she, her, and I am with the Portland City Attorney's Office. And so as Jared said, we filed a joint motion with the court, or status update, excuse me, to explain that the court had sent us back to engage in a little bit more in mediation, try one more time, because the AMAC and the Mental Health Association had raised some concerns with what we had previously proposed. So then there was some further mediation, and then we feel like we got farther along. As Jared said, there may still be some issues that AMAC and the Mental Health Association want to raise with the court. We will find that out for sure at the fairness hearing. Don't want to speak on their behalf, of course. But I do feel like, I think we've talked to you before about what's in there and the, the different provisions that we are moving forward on. And one of them, as Jarrett was mentioning, is about body worn cameras. And we're looking at, a policy. And as you'll see in the addendum language, the city is required to bargain with the union over certain provisions of that policy. And so the interest would be for the city council to get input from the public as to what things they would like to see in that policy before we are bargaining with PPA on that matter. So I really encourage people to please attend the public forum on January 23rd. It is a Sunday from 6 to 8 p.m. There's also going to be a survey that COCO is going to put out, and I think it's going to be in 4 languages, in English, Spanish, Vietnamese. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering all the languages. I think it's the 4 major languages, the 4 most common languages in the city of Portland. And please, we will send it to PCCEP staff to get it out to you all. Please share with as many people as possible. We really want to get as many community members input as we possibly can. I will tell you, the city is also moving forward on looking for an outside entity to perform. We have now dubbed it the 2020 critical assessment. So that was part of the settlement or the addendum that we agreed to, was that the city would perform, you know, a critical assessment by somebody who has expertise. The people that we're looking at are all people that we've talked to DOJ about, and they are folks who regularly perform monitoring functions for cities in settlement agreements or under a consent decree. And also a lot of them have been involved in some protests in other cities and monitoring or assessing what occurred there. If anybody hears weird choking in the background, my dog is making a funny noise and running around with my other dog. And so I apologize for that. So we are, even though the addendum is not yet enforceable and it's not adopted by the court, we still feel like it's important for us to keep moving forward. And I also want to let you all know that the dean, you know, we've been calling it informally the dean, the director of the education of training, the training division. That position posted at the City of Portland website. And if anybody wants the link, let me know. I'll dig it up and post it in here. Please, it's been shared out nationally. I can't remember everywhere that it's posted, but it has been sent out nationally. So we're moving forward with that. Very, very excited about that as well. I think those are the big things that are moving forward within the settlement agreement that, you know, even though it's not enforceable, those are things that we all want to move forward with. I hope that's helpful. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Thanks, Heidi, and appreciate your updates as well. Real quick, Jared, I'm not sure if you saw Tia's question in the chat. If you can answer to that to everyone, so that we all can get the understanding of feedback from that question. Heidi, the question I have was really based on, well, kind of what Tia's asking. You know, we're adding more to the settlement agreement, and I know you're here to represent the city. How is the police bureau working together with the city and with DOJ to get this moving along? And that's what we like to know. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. You know, so PPB is part of the city. And so, you know, I'm in regular contact. You know, Mary Claire Buckley and I talk all the time. Vamshi Reddy, who's on tonight, you know, and one of our new DOJ attorneys, is also in very regular contact with PPB. So we worked closely with them on, you know, the dean position. They went out and visited, Mary Claire and one of the other people from training went out and visited some LA, where they already have a civilian dean of training, and talked to them about best practices. They also contacted, I think it was Baltimore, and other places, that a couple places that there's not that many that have a civilian dean, but those that do, they tried to reach out to them to get some feedback on, you know, what are best practices, what should we be looking for, and that information really educated us as far as working on what the dean position is. So we really are all working closely together, you know, to try to ensure that, well, I'd say for a number of things. One is that we, you know, get back into substantial compliance with settlement agreement. Two is that we adopt these new, you know, new measures to help ensure that, you know, we don't revisit and have what happened in 2020 happen again. And three is to just move forward on transforming policing into a way that recognizes the inequities that have happened in the past. And so, you know, hopefully, I know PPB is interested in that, and they are really focusing on that, and we are working closely with them to help that move forward in ways that we can.
Thank you, Heidi. And also for addressing that. I see some additional questions about remedies. I think the language that you're using, I believe the remedies was what Jared put into the chat as a link. I believe that's what you're referring to, right, Heidi?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're still there, Barb, sorry, Amy, you can see it in the chat. If you can't see it, let us know and we'll have him repost. They're not there.
Okay, you
Report-
guys, I just wanted to let you know, I'm really good with computers. And when you send me a link, I'll go to the site and I will keep clicking until I cannot find what I'm looking for. The only thing up there at the city website is the thing about the foie gras ducks. So if your remedies are supposed to be up there, they're not posted at the link you sent.
So no, Amy, that's not what we're talking about now. It's actually a PDF document that
Well,
Jared
that's what
put
I was
into the,
asking for.
he put it in the chat. But if you need someone to send it to your email, can you do that, Claudia or Theo or Judith? Can you please get that to our members so that they can get access to that directly? That'll
I'll
be
do
very
that.
important. Okay, appreciate it, Judith. Heidi, I want to make sure anyone, I don't see any hands up, but I want to make sure if people have questions, we're getting to those questions, additional questions. What will the 2020 critical assessment entail? What types of data will be gathered? Is a question from Brandon Farley.
Is Jonas Geisler still on the line? I might defer to him, or Vamshi, I know has been working closely on this. There is a scope of work that has been prepared. So Jonas, I see you came off mute. So if you could address that, that would be great.
I'm sorry, I was writing something else for this case. Could you kindly repeat the question?
The question
Excuse me.
is,
Okay, thank you.
what will the 2020 critical assessment entail? What types of data will be gathered? It goes to the scope of work, which I know you had taken the point on negotiating.
Yes, I can pull up the specific document and I'm going to try to wing it whilst I pull it up. Slow down, I've got too many things on my mind. Okay. For the outside assessment, we've left some things to the methodology of the company that's chosen for the outside assessment. And the city's supposed to present to us their recommended selection of companies, so it's not completely in a vacuum. The outside assessment will include public fora to ask the public their impressions of the 2020 response to public protests from any perspective. The assessor from the outside will determine the methodology for that public fora type interaction. It would also include a look back at a sampling of the after action reports and the forced data collection reports. Those are the two types of forms that PPB uses to record forceful interactions in those crowd control events in 2020. And in that sampling, assess the compliance with the settlement agreement, policy, and law for the actions taken during 2020. So if you didn't record something or didn't record justification, obviously a problem. If that was then further approved up the chain, obviously a problem. We want them to then identify through that process what type of failures there were and what type of improvements should be made. That entire assessment will come out with recommendations. The city, like many audits that the General Accountability Office and the federal government does, that audit would allow the city to write a response, like the OIR audits that OIR does right now of PPB, and then publish that entire set, right? The audit, the assessment, the city response, and then come back. I think we said within 1 year, although I don't have it in front of me. I think come back and assess the city's implementation of the recommendations with another public fora and another sampling. The entire process would underpin future training as a needs assessment for future training concerning crowd control and force and whatever else they come up with. I mean, frankly, if it comes up with there's a problem with accountability, then maybe that's an accountability problem that we need to train on that too. So it's not narrowly focused on only the crowd control in that respect. But we'll see what the data are. Let's not presuppose what the end result will be. Heidi, I know you worked on as well. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to let folks know too that the outside, and I'm looking back to a different screen, so my apologies, but the outside entity will be looking at the effectiveness of the crowd control and related training that occurred prior to 2020, the protests, looking at the effectiveness of the responses, what successful strategies were used or should have been used, and what unsuccessful strategies were used or should not have been used. So any successes and failures in communication, leadership, and training. So things like that. I think it's I think it's a pretty thorough look at 2020. And as Jonas said, kind of what was done well, what was not done well, what should have been done better, what could have been done better, and you know, training and how and the preservation of First Amendment protected speech. How did that occur during the protests? So I think it's a good scope to look at and really get feedback, just so folks know too. Part of what DOJ's interest and the city's interest was to, if not have it so large that it would take more than 180 days to get it done. And so so we tried to keep it really focused on the biggest issues that both of us were concerned about, so that we can get the feedback we need. And then part of the thing that the outside vendor will look at when they come back is how well has the city implemented the recommendations that they have in there. So it'll be the first piece of how'd you do, and then the second piece of, well, how'd you do with the information we gave you, and the follow-up.
Sorry, phase 2 is 180 days. I'm sorry, say now.
Oh, I was just
Thank
going
you.
to add that I think it's going to be attached to the filing. I think this will become a public document when it's finalized. I know it's still in the process of negotiation.
And I just wanted to correct myself, Zainab. I said 1 year, it's 180 days for the phase 2.
80 days for phase 2. Okay. Thank you, Jonas. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Jared. Vamshi, did you want to add anything? Because I saw that you came on. Just want to make sure you wanted to add something.
I don't, Zainab. I just
Okay.
was coming on to if there were any questions, but I think that was a thorough recitation of what the outside consultant will do. So thank you.
Okay. Oh, great. I was going to ask Brandon if that answered his question, but thank you. He said that was very helpful. I just want to make sure if there's any additional questions, I don't want to move along unless people are comfortable with that. But before we do that, I see some other things are in the chat and I don't want to miss that. Barb, you said, I believe the TAC will have a member involved in hiring for the Dean Czar. TAC equals Training Advisory Council. I'm not sure if that's a true statement or if she's asking a statement or if she's putting a statement out there or a question. Is that a statement or question, Barb?
I believe it is a statement, and I was hoping Mary Claire her voice would like pipe up and confirm that, since y'all don't.
Okay.
Really.
Thank you.
Yes, Barb, we spoke to the TAC council last night, and we have every intention of, citing a TAC member on the one of the interview panels for the new position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Claire. Tia's comment was, I was really hoping that we could work on getting an Oregonian into that dean position. Is it open now or has this been filled? And I believe they put it in the chat, Tia, but I think I'm not sure if that's a great approach. Let me just say that. I'm not sure if that's a hiring approach or not. You can tell us, Heidi, if that's something that can be done.
Sorry.
No, okay.
I'm an East Coaster. I jump in. I apologize.
Maybe I'm more of an East Coaster too, because I do the same thing. But yes,
Oh, good.
thank you.
Then you and I won't be offended. I'm glad. So the hiring, the recruitment is open now. So it's not filled. And while certainly it would be, we're certainly interested in finding the best candidate, and whether that's somebody within Oregon or somebody outside of Oregon. We really want a very diverse applicant pool and the best applicant pool we can get. And so to do that, we have a nationwide search. So we are not limiting it to Oregon. We'll just find the best person for the job, hopefully.
Great. Thank you, Heidi. Hopefully that answered your question, Tia. And Vamshi, just also let us know that the position closes on February 7th for application. So if you know of people, get the Oregonians, get it out there. Listen, there's an opportunity here. So any other questions for either Jared or Heidi before we move forward? In meaning Department of Justice or the City of Portland? Any further questions? All righty. I'm gonna try this one more time. We're gonna go on to the next piece. I believe Ashley Lancaster, are you still with us? Just want to make sure before we turn it over to you.
Yes, Zainab, I'm here, and
Great.
just to say at the outset, I didn't put together a presentation or anything.
No,
I was just here.
it's just we're going to talk through the PPB directives. Okay, no, I understand you. Thank you for joining us. We understand the time frame too. Again, we're going to be discussing the Portland Police Bureau's directives 1010 use of force. It's under first universal review, I believe. It's there, but we want to also specifically talk about a specific section. Claudia, were you able to put that into and let me close this out so that everyone can see everyone. But Claudia, were you able to put that directive in the? Thank you, appreciate it.
I just added the link to the chat.
Yes, so does anyone need to see it? Because if we need to see each other, we're not going to be able to read it. I know it's very lengthy. We know it's very lengthy. There have been 2 incidents, and I was going to put, because is Ann here yet? Okay. I'm trying my best to be supportive of my my subcommittee co-chair. Where did I lose? I think I lost. Okay, here you guys. And I'm going to put the article that she was really specifically speaking to in the chat. It was really related to moving vehicles. But again, use of force continues to be an area. I don't quote me, but Jared and Heidi, you can let the public know this is still an area that is not in compliance. Right? Okay. And so this is why we're bringing it up today. It is more like not just a review, but really what's been happening in the city. And, while there's lots of news reports, we're just putting in one for now. And this is the conversation that we really wanted to talk about. Where did she go? Ashley. Sorry, Ashley. That's the report and also the directive that we wanted to discuss. And also because it's up for first universal review, the public has the opportunity to give feedback to this policy. And so if you can discuss that process, Ashley, and what you came to be prepared to talk about. Let's just go with that. Thank you.
Sure, Zainab. And just one correction, I put this in the comments. Directive 1010 actually is not up for public comment right now. I think that there is some confusion about that and the active shooter policy, which is up for public comment.
That's what it was. Sorry,
yeah,
we've been going back and forth. Thank you for that correction. And so I think it's 7:35. Can you put? I'm sorry. Is that correct? Ashley, 7:35 is the actual one that's up for review.
I believe it's 7:50, but don't quote me on that.
Okay. Let me go to my notes while you're talking, and we'll put it in there. Okay. Thank you.
You were closer, Zainab. It's 7:30.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
But it's worth noting that we have several policies up for public comment right now. I can drop the link in the comments section. We have.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley.
Over 10 policies posted right now.
So if you want to talk about what we talked about use of force, if we talk more about the vehicle, and then we can probably talk more about the one that's really up for review too. But for now, because this is something, let me just say something that Ann and I talked about, and we want to really talk about at this meeting. And so I want to make sure that we cover that. Thank you so much.
I would actually like to just open it up for questions. As I said, I don't have a formal presentation. I think that's probably the easiest course of action, is to just field your questions, either specifically about the policy, that particular section that you identified in the policy, or other aspects of the use of force policy. I know that you provided a link to an Oregonian article, and Mary Claire, I don't know if we have anybody that can sort of speak to the operation sides of things, but I'm only prepared to talk about the policy. I don't have any information about those specific incidents that are referenced in the article, but I'm happy to answer any policy specific questions, particularly as it pertains to the section that you referenced, Zainab, and 1010. But I think the best path forward is just to field your questions.
Yes, and thank you for that too. Mary Claire did let us know that because of the time frame that the notice of this meeting, there isn't anyone here to really speak to that particular incident itself and what's happening there. But the question that, in regards to the directive is the fact that we're talking about 1010, and the title of the article suggests that the Portland Police Bureau's policy allows for, basically justifies this, am I using the right terms? I don't like to use the wrong terms. So this justifies the Police Bureau's actions on in those two incidents. And so we just want to get clarity on perhaps what we're reading when it comes to the piece about the 8.5, which is moving vehicles. If you can give us any understanding about that policy.
Sure. I'll say at the outset that I'm assuming this is an ongoing investigation. So I think you're correct. The takeaway from the headline of that article suggests that the policy does allow for the use of deadly force or firing at a moving vehicle in certain circumstances. I think that's an accurate statement. As to whether or not those particular incidents are within policy, I don't want to toe that line, but I can tell you that the article was correct in that there are certain circumstances under which officers are permitted to fire at moving vehicles. And I'm happy to walk through the policy or share my screen to pull up the policy if you'd like. And thinking about this meeting and preparing for it, I looked around at other jurisdictions, and I don't know if Jonas or Jared want to chime in here, but I have not been able to identify a law enforcement agency that has an outright prohibition, full stop, on firing at moving vehicles. I think the best practice in this regard generally seems to be to allow for permissible use of deadly force under certain circumstances as defined in our policy. And so an example of those sort of extenuating or exigent circumstances usually falls into the category of an individual driving the vehicle presents an immediate risk of death or serious physical injury to the officer or to others. That's usually the carve out. That's what I've found in almost every policy that I've seen. And the Portland Police Bureau's policy is consistent with that as well. I see Amy has a question about high-speed chase. Amy, are you just asking if officers would be permitted to deploy deadly force or fire their firearms during a high-speed chase? Is that the question?
Yes, that was what I was trying to ask is it used during high-speed auto chasing, like down to freeways or, things of that nature? Yeah.
I think generally the practice of firing at a moving vehicle is ill-advised in most circumstances. I hesitate to go so far as to say that it's a last resort, but from my vantage point and my interpretation of the policy, it sort of is. That is not the language that we use in the policy. I will add that caveat, but it truly has to be, the member truly needs to be able to articulate that there was a threat of serious injury or death to the officer or to others to deploy that type of force. So, these incidents, Amy, are kind of case by case. Generally speaking, though, you know, I want to believe that we would not be driving down the interstate, firing from a moving vehicle at another moving vehicle, but I can't say with certainty that that absolutely will never happen. It totally depends on the circumstances of that particular incident. But generally speaking, it is an ill-advised practice to fire at a moving vehicle or from a moving vehicle. And I see, Tia, you have a question. Sorry, Zainab.
Okay.
Oh, I think you're muted, Tia.
Okay. Mine is a really simple question. when I hear use of force, my mind goes excessive use of force. Is that an assumption, or how is the language to be used when we say use of force? Is it, do we assume it's excessive use of force when we talk about it?
So we define the term use of force in our policy, but generally, just to sort of state it in plain language, there is a constitutional standard established by the Supreme Court as to what is objectively reasonable. And so when you consider notions of excessive force or operating outside of what we call the constitutional force standard, they are, in answer to your question, two different concepts. So I would direct you to our directive, and I can read that right now if you'd like, the definition of our use of force. And all of our definitions, the Bureau developed all of its definitions in conjunction with the Department of Justice through the lens of the settlement agreement. And some of those terms are actually defined in the settlement agreement. I do believe that force is one of those terms that was defined in the settlement agreement. But yes, when you consider excessive force, you're sort of operating outside of the realm of an objectively reasonable use of force. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you. And I plan on reading it in more detail, but I just wanted to clear that in my head.
I totally understand. It's a long policy, Tia. I don't blame you for not wanting to refer to it directly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tia, and thanks, Ashley. Any other questions related to what Ashley was presenting or shared? Thank you, Jonas, for putting that in the chat about force, which is part of the settlement, paragraph 31. Did you want me to read that out? Is that okay? Force means any physical coercion used to affect, influence, or persuade an individual to comply with an order from an officer. The term shall not include the ordinary handcuffing of an individual who does not resist. Okay, thank you. Ashley, I'm sorry not to be abrupt, but there was a question I had regarding some things that we did hear through the media, but just we wanted clarification about the time frame of when officers do report after. Is this considered use of, like she said, use of force and having to write a report? And what we saw was that in some directives that say the officers will have until the end of the day to write their report, and then the supervisors will have 72 hours. Can you kind of explain what the process is when it comes to what happens, or what the policy says what should happen?
Sure, sort of like in the aftermath of these incidents.
Yes, thank you.
Gotcha. So taking a step back, we have different categories of force. There are 4 categories of force, and just to sort of state it plainly, the lowest category of force, category 4, you'll have things like an individual resisting handcuffing, or another example, if I use a baton I make contact with the baton's probably not the best example, but if I'm holding a baton with both hands and I use it to guide a person and sort of nudge them along, right? I'm not using the baton to strike a person, but rather I'm using it in a non-striking fashion. These are category 4 uses of force. They're on the sort of lower end of our force categories. Category 1 is deadly force. So that just to highlight the sort of 2 extremes here. So for categories 2 through 4, officers must write a report no later than the end of their shift. a force report. When they use force, they have to write a force report no later than the end of their shift. And depending on which category of force it is, that determines the level of review that it receives. So for the sort of lower incidental category 4 types of force, I believe that only goes to, that force review goes to the officer's sergeant and their immediate supervisor. For a category 1 use of force, which includes deadly force, that would include the 2 incidents referenced in the article. So anytime an officer fires their firearm.
Hello?
Oh, I'm sorry. Nope. Inadvertent unmute, I think. So anytime there's a category 1 use of force and someone deploys there, an officer deploys their firearm, the reporting process is a little different, and that officers don't submit a force report immediately. And that has to do with the sort of immunity clause and having to work with the district attorney's office and investigators' ability to obtain a statement, when they can interview the officer, et cetera. So it's a little more complicated for deadly force incidents because, again, those incidents are investigated at the highest level and there are other individuals and entities involved in the investigative process. So officers don't submit a police report documenting a category 1 use of force or deadly force by the end of their shift. But for other types of force, they do. I don't know if I answered your question, Zainab.
You did, and so that was very helpful, Ashley. And it's also going to the question of the time frame, how long it takes for these reports to get done, and especially when it comes to incidents like this. What do they have to do what do officers have to do immediately just to make sure that they have a reference of or frame of mind of what happened? Do they have to do their own, I'm not sure, something that they could put on their own record so that they at least can get an understanding of from themselves of what happened and what took place? Like, how much time does a person have on that level, deadly force level 1, category 1? How much time do they have and before they have to submit a report?
Sorry, I struggled to find the mute button there for some reason. So I hate to take cheat my way out of answering this, but I would encourage folks to read. There's a directive, a policy that sort of outlines the process for navigating deadly force incidents. It's Directive 10-10-10. And again, the process is a little different when we're talking about an in-custody death or an officer-involved shooting, and that the member is going to be required to interview within a certain number of hours of the incident, but they aren't completing a traditional force report as described in the use of force policy. There's this entirely separate procedure that investigators follow. They sort of glean the information that an officer would provide in a force report over the duration of the interview. But so all of that information is gathered. Heidi, am I correct? Again, we have 200 policies, everything becomes kind of a blur to me, but I believe it's the 48-hour rule, is that correct? That interview occurs within 48 hours?
And just in case she's having a difficult time also finding her mute button, I do want to call on Byron Vaughn next, and then Theo. I see your hands are up, but just making sure that you're acknowledged. Heidi, did you hear the question? And if so, can you provide an answer? Thanks, Jared. Jared actually put it in the chat so that we can get access to that information more quickly. One more time, Heidi, if you're there, if you can answer the question. If not, we'll just move on to the other questions. Okay, Ashley?
So Zainab, I pulled up the policy and it is 48 hours.
Great, great.
So
Thank you
officers
for that.
are going to be compelled to make a statement to investigators and to the professional centers division within 48 hours of the incident.
Thank you, Ashley. Byron, your question, and then Theo.
Yes, it was mainly for Ashley or anybody that can answer this. When you say force, incident, a guy gets arrested and he's tussling with, he doesn't want to get handcuffed. The cop has to use some type of force to get this person under control, to get him under handcuff. How is that separated from unnecessary force that he doesn't use? Because it kind of put the police officer in a bind or a pickle in a sense. If he wants to apprehend a guy and put him in handcuffs, yet the use of force, of excessive force, could blur some things up, or it could get some people in trouble, if that makes sense.
Can I, Ashley, do you want me to try to answer that question?
Yeah,
or-
no, it's so funny. I just sort of chuckled to myself and thought that the attorneys might want to weigh in on that. It's a great question, Byron.
You're so funny. Yeah, so Byron, under our policy, we have different categories of force. And so the one that you're talking about where somebody is resisting an officer handcuffing them, but they're not actually getting into a fight. It's just, like I'm stiffening up, I'm not letting you pull my hand behind my back. That we call that control against resistance. And that is the least level of force. But so even though that's not a constitutionally prohibited use, not considered a constitutional use of force, the city's policy goes beyond what the Constitution requires, and we still call that a use of force. So if an officer were to use force, when somebody was resisting handcuffs and they used that force, if it was done in a way that violated policy, it would still be under our definition, an excessive use of force, even if it may not be legally in a lawsuit. Maybe it wouldn't violate the Constitution, but it would still violate our policy.
And how do you get that out of the officer if he's not willing, able to come up with that, or he's not willing to come forward saying he had to use a little excessive force without any repercussions, or even maybe him getting written up or some of that nature?
Well, so anytime force is used, an officer is required to fill out the force data collection report, FDCR. So they are required by policy when they have to use force against, like what I said, like control against resistance. They are required to fill out that force report, and then that force report goes through that after action process of analysis. And so the officer just puts in there, what did I do? Why did I do it? What were the circumstances? And then that gets reviewed to ensure that use of force followed the policy, was appropriate, and was not excessive for the circumstances.
Will the officers or officers, will their background come into play if they've been using excessive force or use force in the past, and say, hey, could this be a trending thing with this one officer or this department?
So, I think that I would put it this way. When you're looking at a particular instance, then you need to look at that particular instance. And just like, I'm sorry, I'm a former public defender. So in criminal cases, you can't use the fact that somebody did something prior to show that they did it that time, because it doesn't mean that just because I did it once doesn't mean I did it in that particular instance. So that would be the same thing. But the way but certainly if somebody's used force that's excessive in the past, then, a supervisor is going to keep a close eye and make sure that that doesn't happen again. And then also where it would come into play is if there's a determination that it was excessive use of force and they previously have had that happen, that is under our discipline guide, that aggravates it and makes it more serious. It goes down. So our discipline guide can go down a level and you have more significant repercussions. So the discipline gets more serious. And then it also you can also have a more severe penalty going this way if there's aggravating factors. So if they've had a violation before, it puts them in another category of a more serious sanction for a second or a third violation. So hopefully that answers your question. And the other thing that we do have is the, sorry, Zainab, I know you're trying to jump in, is the employee information system. So if there's even just uses of force get tracked and there's sort of this alert that comes up to a supervisor just because somebody is engaged in a force event. And so at least is getting pinged. So a supervisor is going to look at, hey, why are they why are they coming up again and again? And that was put into place to try to ensure that we can catch people, before it becomes a problem.
Thank you, Heidi. You did it right. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Byron.
Thanks, Byron. Thanks, Heidi. Real quick, I see Barb after Theo. And then Jared, if we can read that at the end, I'll read that, okay? And Barb, I guess you'll ask the question. Thank you.
Thanks, and my question is more of a question of curiosity. This is Theo Latta. I'm not a PCCEP member, I'm a PCCEP staff member, but I do have a question related to what Ashley was talking about. And Ashley, thank you again. And Mary Claire for coming short notice. I always appreciate you always come short notice, as do Jared and Heidi. So thanks. My question is actually to Jared and Heidi. I wonder, but related to what Ashley was talking about, I wonder if this directive will be impacted, particularly with regard to reporting and interviews when a body camera program is adopted and implemented. And is that being discussed currently in your ongoing negotiations and discussions?
Theo, I'm sorry, I missed part of that. What was the first part? I heard the last part of, is that being discussed in your ongoing negotiations, but I'm sorry, I didn't hear what is what.
Oh, sure. The directive, particularly as it relates to the reporting and the interviews in the time frame and how that goes. I wonder if that's something that's being discussed and if this directive will change at all as a result of your ongoing negotiations and discussions in your mediations. I know that the DOJ may have, so I don't know what you can discuss either, but it's a question of curiosity, I suppose.
I don't know, like the review and timing. So the 1010 policy is currently under review, and and DOJ and the city are discussing and kind of go back and forth and looking at, the public, it was out for public comment, as Ashley probably said earlier, and then DOJ is in the process with the city. We are all discussing, the things that maybe need to get changed and maybe could be worded better, and kind of how do we make this policy better? What have we learned in the last few years since we last edited it? But I don't know that there's a lot in there, Theo, and so I don't know that I could say exactly what all's. There's a lot of things we're looking at changing, and so I can't remember if the timing though of when the interview has to happen. We would have to bargain that. We already, that's what we bargained in 2016. So, I think if you've followed some of what we publicly posted on the Rethink website about contract bargaining, you can see, and if you've come to any of the bargaining sessions, you have some sense of the things that are the priorities for the city right now.
And I was going to, answer Theo. I understood your question. No, those timelines for reporting and reviewing force aren't part of the mediation or the solution that came out in the proposed remedies for the non-compliance in 2020. Although a body-worn camera could very well, capture a contemporaneous account of a use of force incident. So somehow, it's related and somewhat. The settlement agreement at paragraphs, I think it's 69, 70, it provides for certain timelines that the city has complied with in terms of the policy. Whether they implement it and officers always meet that is, one of the issues that came up in the protest because there were so many force events. So I think that's the best way I would answer what I understood your question. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you, Heidi and Jared. And one thing I want to make sure, and you, as I move to Barb's question, is there a directive right now for the body-worn cameras? And if not, when would that be? When would that happen? But before, you don't have to answer that now. Barb, your question.
My question is actually a comment. I'm going to get on my soapbox here as a community member and member of the Behavioral Health Subcommittee. And for this audience and any other audience, as we start to learn more and more about people with mental health and behavioral health issues that are being arrested by the police for whatever reason, there is something I really want us to consider and keep in mind. How many people have been affected by trauma? And I have just this wonderful story of literally watching somebody who was meditating, waiting to be arrested because he knew he was going to be arrested. He was sitting in the parking strip, cross-legged, eyes closed. And the 3 cops just came and went swoop on him under both armpits and in front of him. And he, of course, immediately stiffened up and had a complete PTSD response. He's a veteran. That would be completely normal, when all they really needed to do was say, "Mr. Green, will you please stand up and give us your hands?" So I just see stuff where the police are causing themselves more work by not assessing the situation appropriately. That's what I'd like to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Barb. Appreciate the comments. I want to make sure that everyone else who has questions or comments have the time. And Ashley, I hope you're still there. I know we're really focusing on the directive itself. And I believe you've answered a lot of questions so far. I also want to say different situations, different incidents that happen in the city, are sometimes isolated to those incidents. And we don't want to really generalize the entire department, the entire city. However, we've noticed through the settlement agreement, as Barb mentioned, this was the precursor to why we're here today, in regards to how those who are treated with mental health or behavioral health concerns. And so hopefully, as we look to move forward to complying, the city and Portland Police Bureau, we will be able to have more conversations like this and involve the community in the dialogue. I see Ann just joined us, and so I want to make sure I acknowledge Ann Campbell. She's also a PCCEP member since April 2020, as well as on our subcommittee, our Settlement Agreement and Policy Subcommittee. And thank you, Ann. We are discussing right now the directive that we talked about planning. I'm not sure if you had any specific questions yourself as you're joining us, and not to put you on the spot. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and I'm so sorry I'm late. My meeting went longer, and anyways, I'm so glad that you're in good hands here with Zainab, and thank you. Nice to see you, Theo, and everyone. I think I just want to listen for a few minutes to see where you are, and I'm glad you're talking about that particular directive in lieu of the information with the 2 shootings that happened recently, officers involved in shooting in moving vehicles. So I'll just listen, and thank you again.
Thanks, Ann. I did want to also mention, it Ashley has her hand up, but as I mentioned this, because I'm noticing people are getting on at certain times, we will be talking about that next, about what the time is regarding our meetings, but we really appreciate everyone being here today. Ashley, I see your hand up.
Zainab, I just wanted to take an opportunity. I heard you say a few moments ago, you referenced sort of the original investigation of the DOJ and the original focus of the settlement agreement being on their finding that the Bureau demonstrated a pattern and practice of using excessive force against folks in perceived or actual mental health crisis. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to say that those directives related to our response to folks experiencing mental health crisis, we have those posted for comment right now, actually. So I wanted to highlight that, since that is sort of just full circle moment, reminding everyone of the original scope of the DOJ's investigation. Those policies are up for the first universal review and public comment period right now.
Thank you, Ashley, because I did also see that too. I know that we have our team, our subcommittee, the Behavioral Health Subcommittee, Amy, who is the chair of that committee. I believe that they're managing the directives. Amy, did you want to make any comments or thoughts about what Ashley shared before we move on?
I would love to, except I'm on call this week and I was handling a crisis. So I wasn't really able to connect, but we are working on the mental health directives, which have to do with the holds, the director's holds, because I want to learn more about that process on how folks are admitted into the hospital and what's the policy, how's it done. And the other is about the mental health folks in crisis. That's another set of directives that we are wanting to take on because a lot of folks are impacted, and I'm just hoping we can maybe make some additions because of the rules of COVID, have changed a lot of the ways that things operate. And so those rules aren't listed in the current directives. So maybe we need to do some add-ons about the things that have changed since COVID. So as far as handling folks in crisis, there's a whole new set of rules. So that's a little bit more. Our meetings are the first Tuesday of each month, and we'll have speakers there so that folks can get their questions answered, and we will do the best we can to continue on this conversation. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you. Yes, it was. And thank you, Amy. And thank you, Barb, for putting in when the dates are for the meeting. And also Claudia for putting in all the directives. Everyone is wonderful. Chat, just go to your chat. Look at the chat. There's so much information in there. Byron, I'm going to call on you because I see your hand up. And again, before we go to you, Byron, too, I know it's 6:53. We have 7 minutes when it comes to our closing time of our meeting. I always try to make sure that we close on time. However, I want to also make sure that we can facilitate this dialogue that is really generating right now. But again, if you have any further questions, please let us know. Byron?
This is just a quick yes or no question. Is there something, because I haven't been up on this. This is, I think, my couple of meetings. I'm not sure. Is there something that's in, like when the police approach somebody with mental health behavior, is there type of thing they can call in to find out if this person is under the mental behavior? So let's take it easy when we approach this guy, when we run his name, or is there not?
Byron, did you ask whether or not, I'm sorry, I was typing an answer to somebody, and so I heard part of it. Were you asking whether or not a requirement that somebody give their name, an officer?
No, when they go, say like the Barb situation, the police can call in once they talk to this person, say, hey, what's your name? My name is Byron Vaughn. We're going to call in Byron Vaughn's name, and it says, oh, Byron Vaughn is asterisk as having mental health problems. Is there something that the police can go to help them, to even help them notice somebody with mental health before they have to tussle them and get them in handcuffs, then find out that they have a mental health problem? And something that's certified from a doctor that can, say this person really does have these issues.
Yeah, there's not. And I would be concerned if, I don't know, I'd be a little worried if we had something like that people would be put on when they shouldn't be, or not taken off when they should be. But I know PPP does have their behavioral health unit where folks, oh, good point, Zainab, where people who have ongoing engagement with the police and seem to need help and support, that the behavioral health unit, those officers will reach out and try to help connect people with the support that they need. So.
Thank you, Heidi.
Yeah, thanks.
Everything is moving so fast here. And I love that question too about whether or not, but there are the PS3, I just want to put it, I'm going there, the PS3s that are being hired now and promoted into these positions to be able to, this is a question, but a statement, to be able to support in this method. And then how do the police officers get connected with them in order to get their support.
Are you thinking Portland Street Response or PS3s?
The Portland something specialist, the PSSS.
Oh, yeah.
Where they're hiring like 40 members to help with, isn't that right?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that is right. So they are there, to perform work that doesn't require, police powers. And, it's a good question about, they haven't had that many before. So to date, they've kind of worked more with officers or, on traffic issues or things like that. They've done, they haven't had the same role. I hope that, I think that with hiring so many more, I know that that PPB is hopeful that they can, have a larger role in engaging more with the public so that you have a non-police group of people who can engage with the public. But I don't, I'm not, and I just don't have the specifics of exactly how they're going to be, how they're going to be sent out. And so I don't know and I don't think we have anybody that's in that role at PPB here tonight, but it'd be a great question to ask again.
Okay, thank you so much, Heidi. And while we're wrapping up, is there anyone here from Portland Police Bureau? There are people here, but I also know of timing, of the time we're about to end this meeting. If that's okay, if we need extra time, please let us know. I have time. Just want to make sure that we are managing others and make sure that we're respectful of everybody else's time as well. But any other further questions as I say that? Oh, Byron, did you have a question or is that a old hand up?
Oh, no question. I'm sorry.
No problem. Okay, everyone. So let me try to go back to this. And thank you everyone, actually, especially Ashley Lancaster for joining us. Like someone said, joining us in 2 days notice. We appreciate it. We appreciate Heidi, as well as Jarrett, as well as everyone who had participated today. Before we close our meeting, is there a question? I hope I'm not missing questions in the chat, but before we close our meeting, and this is with my colleague Ann, we're going to talk about the next meeting. We want to have a continued discussion on use of force because there are other additional questions, and we're hoping to invite other folks from the police of the city. The city. To be a part of this conversation and give them more notice of this conversation. And then we want to focus on training because that's one of the things that we know that we have been focusing on when it comes to the compliance and making sure we're talking about the training and officer accountability, and then also community engagement in our PCCEP meeting times. And so, Ann, I see your hand up. And I will let you share.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I mean, you had a really good groove going. This meeting, it seems just from this part, you've done an incredible job. Thank you, Zainab. I actually don't have anything to add. We will, carry on next month. So continue. Thank you. Wonderful.
Perfect, and appreciate it. And thank you all. And thank you all for joining us today. If you're interested, again, in learning more information, in joining the settlement agreement and policy subcommittee, if you're interested in joining any other committees, we have the youth subcommittee, we have the racial equity subcommittee, and we have the behavioral health subcommittee. And we're also looking for additional PCCEP members. So all of this to say, everyone's welcome to participate and join us. And again, our next meeting, I had that up. Sorry, it's one of those things where I have to have mental notes for myself. Sorry. The next meeting is scheduled, and make sure this is correct, Ann and Claudia and Theo and Judith. The next meeting is scheduled February 10th, and our time is going to be consistent across the board. All PCCEP meetings are going to be from 6 to 7:30. Please confirm that this is correct.
I like that time. That time's
That's
great.
all PCCEP subcommittee meetings.
Well, sorry, we will start all meetings at 6 p.m. Now, whether or not they go for an hour and a half or hour or whatever, every meeting will start at 6 p.m. going forward. We're also looking, like we talked about, procedural plans is to make sure that everyone gets information 10 days in advance of those meetings. We're really working to that as well. And before we close off this meeting, because Theo Latta is transitioning into another position, we want to wish him a farewell and good luck with his new position. We really appreciate all the work that you've done over the years with PCCEP and with your work here. Again, if anyone wants to say anything, we can do that real quick because we really want to make sure that we give him the love that he deserves. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Theo, for everything.
Thanks,
We'll
Theo.
miss you,
You're
Theo.
awesome.
Thank you all very much. I really
Best wishes. You're gonna have great success in your next role.
Thank you very
But
much.
now I'm super confused. What time is the regular PCCEP board meeting supposed to start, Claudia? Did that get changed now?
The general meeting will still be at 5. It'll be, but all the
All
subcommittee.
the
That
subcommittee
was
meetings.
the point I was trying to make.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. No, it's
Thank
okay
you,
then.
Barb. No, because I was confused. Okay, thank you, Barb. Okay.
I'm not like,
Well,
we can't
yes.
have a 3-hour meeting starting at 6 o'clock. Amy will
You're right.
never make it.
You're right, but thank you for the clarity. Its subcommittee meetings are starting at 6 p.m. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for
Theo,
joining us. And
thank
if
you,
you want to stay
Theo.
on,
You've done a great job
you can
and
stay on.
been a good bridge between community and the work that has to be done in terms of this process. So I really want to commend you. You'll be making a great contribution wherever it is you're going.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that, Mr. Barnett. And my son was right here to hear that. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm going on to the Oregon Department of Education. So I will do my best there. Thank you again.
Well, don't be a stranger.
I won't. Maybe I'll come join.
That'd be great.
That would really confuse Byron.
Thank you.